the podcast where no subject is too taboo to discuss. Now, please welcome your hosts, Andy Barker and Lou Del Pree. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Nothing's Off the Table, another Friday night. You can tell you're getting old when you look forward to your Friday nights of doing podcasting. You know what I mean? Lou, little Lou, what's up, buddy?
Andy, how's it going? I'm happy to make two shows in a row.
Yeah, that is something. You know what? Has your pay been docked yet?
No.
Oh, okay. We'll have to get with HR and figure out what's going on with that because we can't be having that mess.
As my father would say, you can't squeeze water out of a stone. You know.
My father used to tell me, "Well, the world needs ditch diggers too." So heard that one a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest for you tonight is best-selling author Paul Hollis. Paul, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Andy and Lou. I'm happy to be here, and thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. You have very interesting. In fact, the books that you write are right up my alley. I really enjoy the espionage, the military espionage genre. Can you tell us a little bit about your Hollow Man series?
Sure. They actually reflect something I did in the early 1970s, which was that I actually had the privilege or the desperation, whichever way you want to look at it, of tracking some terrorists in Europe in 73 to 76, 77, somewhere in there. And these books are based on that. I like to say that 80% of the books are about 90% true. Some of the scenes, I wasn't in the scenes, so I sort of kind of had to gather from to keep the book together what I'd heard later or what I had found out prior to any relationships on that. So I tried to keep those as honest as I could too. So they are about an inexperienced guy, not Jason Bourne or Jack Ryan, nothing like that.
Right.
It was more like a red shirt guy in a Star Trek episode. Expendable, though I didn't actually realize it or believe it at the time. But they said, yeah, we're going to give you a free reign of Europe, and you do anything you want, go anywhere you want. You need money, go to American Express, we'll get it for you, and just travel around until we need you, and then you're on. It's showtime, right? So then I had to track and find out information about different people that let's say the U.S. government wanted to find out if they were actually coming to the American shores, basically. And so what was supposed to happen was that I gathered this information, I turn it over to the professionals to, let's say, resolve the situation. And but it didn't always work out like that because I was young and hard-headed and had my own thoughts about everything. Of course, you'll see my whole life has been like that. I'm my own best mentor. Every day of my life, I've been the best mentor for me. So anyways, I thought I knew everything and that sort of thing. So I kind of took some of the plots and the sequences of tracking these terrorists a little bit too far, let's say. And so that's really what the books are all about.
So again, we're talking to Paul Hollis, best-selling author of the Hollow Man series. Hollow Man, London Bridge is Falling Down, right? It's number 2, and then you have Candleburn.
No, Surviving Prague is the third one.
Surviving Prague. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
No, so right. So I know it's 3, and then you said the fourth one is on its way out.
It'll be out in early next year, probably March, April, something like that. So, yeah.
How long does it take you to write a book?
When I get serious about writing, it's probably 6 months or so.
Wow.
And you can tell that I'm just kind of in the beginning stages of this one. It's coming out in March because I've got the title, and once I got the title, I'm ready to go, kind of stuff. But yeah, it's really, there's no real planning to it because everything that I talk about, I've experienced. I've gone through it. So it's a kind of like a setting up the characters and all that. All the characters are real. I've changed a few names, but not very many. But yeah, they're all real. And so it's like, I know what happens, right? So it's kind of like I'm just a reporter, kind of typing it up and writing it and sending it off to publish. So yeah, that's how I do it. So probably a half pantser, 3/4 pantser, and maybe a plotter of a quarter of the time, maybe something like that. But it just is all a sequence of how I remember things happening in the early 70s.
It looks like we've got a couple folks in the chat room. Chris Christman is in the room. Chuck Budio, and they said hello.
Oh, great. Hi, guys.
So, how did you get into this line of work? Were you recruited? Did you seek active employment there, or?
No. Let me start off at like the beginning of my life, and you can see where the road to ruin actually started. So, when I was 6 years old, I was actually born in Alabama. When I was 6 years old, I learned how to brew moonshine and sell it with my father. I moved on to Chicago. Kind of grew up there. I went to university there as well, and in fact, I went to Michigan Tech with the first year because I thought I was going to be a civil engineer. You know, I was like, oh, I'm going to be a great civil engineer and write my name on bridges and all that sort of thing. And after one semester, I realized that the only way I was going to get my name on a bridge was to spray paint it on. Right. So I changed my my major to staying out of Vietnam, which was a much better process for me. So, but during the time I was in college, I was 19 in 1969, which was like the peak of everything there, of everything of the 60s and whatever, you know, the subcultures and all that. Having had my first encounters with the let's say the DEA and ATF, et cetera, at a young age, I thought, well, you know, the best thing to do is probably just distill LSD in the lab for the Cicero mob, right? So what harm could that do, right?
Oh boy!
So I would distill it, and I'd take maybe a half ounce or so out to Cicero, which is a western suburb of Chicago, and visit my favorite Italian restaurant out there at the time, and sell it to the mob for $500, about a half an ounce or so, 3/4 an ounce sometimes. It just depended, and so I did that, and then had run-ins with the let's say demonstrations of the Democratic Convention in Chicago in '68, and with all the hippies and everybody from Rubin and knew all those guys, Rubin and I don't, you know, Hayden and the whole like of, you know, so Hoffman, etc. So, but I really did come of age when about 2 years after '67, you know, with the Summer of Love, I thought, you know, maybe I just in '69 the summer, I thought, oh, maybe I just kind of go out to San Francisco and see for myself. It's been 2 years, maybe they got the wrinkles ironed out, everything, and it'd be a pretty cool place. So that summer, I hung out in the Haight, yeah, so that's probably, yeah, it was '69, yeah, early. So I was 19, and I ran into some people like you know, and um, Dre Slick, you know, and Janis Joplin. They all hung out there, and they played at there was a place there, you know. So I hung with the summer with them, and I thought, okay, this is pretty cool, and that was my first insight into real rock and roll, into the real.
Hanging out with Janis Joplin, sharing ham sandwiches, huh?
I did drink a lot of Southern Comfort with her. I do remember that.
Did you ever partake in what you were making?
No, never had an interest in it. Yeah,
Smart businessman.
Never got a taste for alcohol or drugs. Maybe those were the two instances that turned me off of them. But yeah. I saw a guy when I was 6 years old. I saw a guy. My dad used to run the moonshine in his car for gasoline, right? So it was like 110 octane. So it was like you could outrun any police car in those days. but even if they stopped him, they'd have nothing. You'd see nothing but mason jars lined up in the trunk. And so what my job was to get under the car with the mason jar of choice of whichever one the guy bought, whether it's a quart or a gallon or whatever. Get under the car, and there was this little shuttlecock my dad put in, and you could just twist it, and then the stuff would run out into this thing, and I'd wrap it up and hand it up to him, and one guy just took the cap off and drunk it right down like this and fell over backwards, and he was out for 2 weeks. I guarantee.
Oh my God!
Out for 2 weeks. But the next time I saw him, I remember he says, "You got any of that stuff again?" I gotta have that same. I gotta have the same batch. It was like, what? So anyway, but anyway, so we got that, and then I thought. I graduated finally, and I was staying out of Vietnam. And by that time, the lottery, I don't know if you guys remember the ping pong ball lottery, that was kind of winding down, and so I was kind of home free on that. And my dad said, "Hey, I can get you into Quantico if you want to be an FBI agent." And because he worked for the railroad, he was all interstate kind of stuff, and he worked with the feds a lot. And I said, I was trying not to carry a gun, and it'd be kind of an irony for me to carry a gun for the rest of my life, kind of thing. So I joined the Peace Corps because it was about a year after I graduated, because I started looking at my life and I said, gee, this working for a living isn't working really well for me. So I need to do something else. So I got to the Peace Corps, and they sent me down to a place called Paintsville, Kentucky, which I think is probably close to the Cumberland Gap, and it kind of overlooks the lost world of West Virginia and that area kind of thing. And after about 3 weeks, I discovered they weren't really kidding about this training stuff. So I jumped at the first opportunity I could to see Africa. And I thought, well, seeing lions and tigers might be a better alternative than actually the dinosaurs that I hear roam around West Virginia, right? So, so I took this thing, and I ended up in a place called Tanzania, which was a really new country at that time in East Africa. And I got there at rainy season, and so and not a week into that, I was up to my knees in mud and some kind of animal dung, and digging ditches, digging actually latrines for the villagers, kind of stuff. And not that they would ever gonna use them or anything, but that's what we thought they were going to do, Yeah. So they need a hole in the ground, like we need a hole in our head. So I'm there, and I'm doing this away, and it's raining like cats and dogs, and I'm thinking, oh, man, am I crying, or is it just raining harder now? And in comes this guy in this kind of cream colored suit with a little umbrella, and not a speck of anything on him, no wet or anything. He says, "Hey, what you doing there?" I said, basically, what do you think I'm doing? He says, I'd like a better job. I said, what do you have in mind? And anything is like better than this, right? He says, well, look, I got this position open that I'll let you run around Europe anywhere you want to go, other than Iron Curtain countries, of course. Run around anywhere you want, but when I need you, when I call you, you got to be somewhere else, right? And do this, follow these people, collect information from libraries, from news articles, from looking at the microfiche and all that stuff, because there's no computers. Guess what? No cell phones back then. Right. So I thought, okay, that sounds pretty good. Geez, it's like, hey, I could see Europe on somebody else's dime. And so he says, well, first we got to give you some survival training with one of our buddies that actually teaches the SEAL teams how to survive during their training. It's a Marine Corps guy, and I wish that I had gone to Vietnam about 10,000 times in that 1 month that he had me there. But he taught me, basically how to survive in quicksand, sort of, as I was sinking lower all the time. But did that, and they sent me for a joke with the Italian special forces for 2 weeks in the mountains of southern mountains of Switzerland, northern mountains of Italy, there somewhere, and for survival training. And I remember eating, let's say, tarantulas over an open fire. And I do not remember ever seeing tarantula on a menu in France. I can tell you that. So anyways, I'm not sure what that was all about, but that was a part of it. And so then they let me go and started the book series, basically, because I had some pretty wild experiences there. Never was a very good shot. I did shoot guns and stuff, but I hooked up very early on in the experience with a MI6 lady officer who was actually, oddly enough, a year younger than me, but way more talented and political and strategic, and that strategic thinking sort of thing. So she kind of kept me in line and probably saved my life at least a dozen times, I would say, in that. But and she kind of kept me basically alive and kind of pointed in the right direction, even though she and I were not looking for the same things a lot of times, but she sort of felt that I would be dead if I continued on my self-mentoring path and that way. So that's how I ended up in Europe and tracking down terrorists. It was the fun part of it was actually disguises, if you could, for lack of something better, right?
Yes.
Being a young kid, I mean, you think I look young now. It's not, but I was actually when I was 25, I probably looked like I was 12 years old, sort of thing. So
well, you look great for 125.
I know, don't I? Yeah, not a day
fantastic.
Over 20, right? So anyways, I figured out how to change the color of my hair, because it's always been blonde until recently. So that'd be like the liquid shoe polish we used to have for shoes in the old days. It was just like the roll-on stuff that massages in really, and you just kind of wash out a lot until you get the color that you want. Oddly enough, I understood really quickly in those days that people don't look at one another. They don't really look at each other, and probably not today either. But back then they didn't. And so just a simple pair of glasses, like the old stereotype of Clark Kent and Superman, I could believe that no one would ever recognize either one of them to be the same person, because they just don't look at people. And you could change your gait a little bit. I mean, I put a pedal in my shoe and walk in, like with a limp, and it's like different person, right? I put a little gray in my hair, and then I was 20 years older, and put a little phony beard on, like in the theater, sort of thing, with the mustache and that. Totally different character, it's like so. And that part was a lot of fun. I not only outran a few terrorists in those days, but the police as well. So many occasions, yeah. So,
are you allowed to say what agency you worked for, or no?
Yeah. I mean, I was off books, so I was not officially employed by them. This is the precursor. I was not employed by them because of several facts. One, that they expected me to die. The second one is that they told everyone up until the early 2000s, I think, that they had no boots on the ground, none at all, and that was the NSA, right? So what I did was I collected information when they could not get it on the phones. In those days, there were a lot sketchier connections than they are now, of course, and so the NSA was learning as I was learning, a lot of things. I mean, they knew a lot, but they were learning how to collect information, basically. And of course, the cell phones just proliferated and increased their activities on that thing. And so there probably was a point beyond my time that they probably didn't need boots on the ground because of the technology and the satellites and things like that. But yeah, NSA and I was and the professionals that I was supposed to turn it over to was through Fort Meade in Maryland, to the CIA in Langley. So, and then they would do what they famously do and famously didn't do, as the story goes. So,
And the NSA stands for no such agency.
never say anything is what it stands for. Yeah.
Fair. Very
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah. So that's how I ended up in Europe. And so that was a real story, but I hope you enjoyed it. But
Fascinating.
every bit of that was true. And I'm one of the people who didn't expect to live to 30 in those days, because I didn't want to be Soylent Green. And and we all thought in the 60s,
Soylent Green.
In the 60s, you're not going to live to be 30. If you were 30 and you were old, right? And so as a consequence of that thinking, I had my midlife crisis at 25, thinking, I haven't done it. I have not done anything in my whole life, right? So what am I going to do here? And that actually kind of was a kind of a subconscious thing of when I was working with these guys, and having no respect for authority ever in my life, which is not a good thing. Kids out there, don't do that. You have authority, have respect sometimes, but do your critical thinking. That's my good sense for the day. So I'm done with that. Right. So okay. So
So Mr. Hollis, I just want to ask you real quick. So Andy and I have varying military backgrounds, and I'm familiar with some of the stuff you're talking about, and I'm trying to avoid being too specific because some of it, is still classified, whatever. I'm sure you're aware, but they have been able. I'm sure since the time you went through the training, it's phenomenal the way they have things calculated out now. Like they know exactly how many people the human brain can keep track of from an angle. Like in front of you, we know how many people you can track. If you're trying to watch behind you without actually looking, they know how many people you can track. Like they know these things have been tested. And so the training is so refined. I was when I did some of that training, and I always say, during my time in special operations, I was a C teamer, right? They weren't calling me to get bin Laden. They weren't. They'd have been like, "Who's there?" No. they can pull security, not those guys, right? But the training you receive, I think, is so calculated. People don't understand. Like they've put money and science into this. But the question I wanted to get to, really was, when you're watching period pieces like from the 70s, like movies and things, do you ever come across something where you're like, oh, they don't know how close they are, but you don't say anything, but you're like, oh, wow.
Yeah. And in fact, starting off the first book, there's actually Franco was still alive. Francisco Franco was still alive, 73, 74. But he knew he was dying. Basically, he was like 80 or whatever, and he actually hired not hired, but he gave the leadership as a prime minister, because Franco was ruling illegally anyways, because there was still a king and queen of Spain that had just left the country. They didn't quit. They just said, well, we'll stay over here in France until our guys sorted out, sort of in the Spanish Civil War in 36 or so. So he was ruling it until then, and he kind of refused to give the power back to the king, to the king, basically. I think the queen was gone by then. So anyways, he gave the power to this, okay, you're going to follow you on. And he was one of his confidants through the Civil War and on through the politics of the 50s and 60s, etc. His name was Luis Carlos Blanco, and he was actually blown up over a 5-story church building from a car. Right, so car driving down the road. Guys dug out underneath the street from a basement apartment and filled it with dynamite. Blew those guys over the church. I was right around the corner from that, and there was a movie. There was a movie. The only thing that saved my life was the concrete facing of the building that was around there. But that car went way over a 5-story church into the courtyard, and I was right there with it. And what and people always ask me, why didn't the car just kind of explode? Well, because it was a Dodge Dart of all things, right? It's like, why would a prime minister have a Dodge Dart? Well, the reason that he had the Dodge Dart was twofold. That he had the streets in those days in the old cities of Europe were very narrow, because they were made for coaches and horses and things like that. So it gave him better mobility around the streets and stuff. And the second thing was that he had this generally 2,000-pound car was about 8,000 pounds because of the extra armor that he had on it. So it was so well encased that it just threw the whole thing over the church into the next courtyard. And actually you can look that up, and that's definitely an event there. But I was right around the corner, actually trying to stop him from going down that street at the time. So. And that opens welcome to the Hollow Man, sort of thing. So yeah, but yeah, I was in a lot of situations like that where people don't know, and life is really a tenuous kind of a thing in the end. It's like we don't know how lucky we are to be 3 seconds, like change our mind about something, and it only takes 3 seconds, and you don't get hit by the car that day or something, right? So it really teaches you to live every day the best way you can live, right? And whatever makes you happy, right? Or whatever makes you sad. A lot of people are like pessimists, and it's like everything's a bad thing. So, but that's their thing, right? So I let them do it. I don't argue. So, but anyway, so that started off. But I had many interactions with people that might have been famous if we hadn't stopped them. Kind of thing, but I have an inch and a half scar on my hand from a knife fight. That was fun. So
sounds like it.
Yeah, but then the MI6 lady actually showed up on the scene because I was there. I was at a place to meet her, and she showed up about 5 minutes late, and so I was fighting off this guy, and she actually had to finish him off.
That's the one thing that the movies never ever get right, is that if you're in a knife fight, you're getting cut. You just count on it. It's going to happen several times. It's just who can inflict the most damage quicker.
And another thing with the movies is that their fist fights, they last way too long. Way too long. It's like as soon as you knock somebody down, you don't Roy Roger them back up, and so they're standing there next to you. You kick them, it's like. That's how you learn to street fight in Chicago. Somebody's down, you kick them, and wherever they're at. And so that saved me a lot of times. Like, the hell with the Marine Corps, I'm kicking this guy, right? so no, I don't care what they taught me there, but anyway, yeah, it's a
so Mr. Hollis,
fun thing now.
Andy and I talk a lot about there's people who there are killers, and then there's people who can kill. And you talked about the agent that was helping you and disguises and things, and and I've said it here before. I'm not a killer. I'm somebody who can kill, right? And there is a difference, right? But how scary is it when you run into those people who are nobody? They can be anybody, anytime, anywhere, and you're like, you know what? I don't even know who I'm talking to. I mean, for some, it's natural. Can you comment on some of that?
Yeah, well, people are, I don't know if you ever really know anybody, even if you're best friends and all that, you don't really know the secrets. If you're best friend with somebody, you're still going to have secrets, right? So imagine how many secrets you have from all that you don't know, kind of thing. And if you get paranoid about it, sometimes paranoid people are following them, but mostly you talk yourself into being paranoid, like, oh my God, everybody in the world is a bad guy, and when they're not, I've lived in Europe probably 10 years basically, and I've worked in probably 55, 60 countries, and all the people kind of seem to be like us. Oddly enough, they speak a different language, and the cultures are a little bit different, but their wants and needs and beliefs are pretty much all the same, and so it comes down to like who starts the wars. It's not the little guys, it's the people who are looking for profit. It's all about greed, right? It's like you're looking for some kind of profit, whether it is resources or natural resources. Oil. The oil is typical kind of thing, and or poppy fields or whatever, right? So,
Right.
but people are
But
I
what
think
what I'm alluding to is your experience with people who could become anyone at any time. Like
oh
if you
yeah,
ask, if you had them, hey, I need you to play this role, and they just naturally, or hey, I need you to play this role, and they go right from one role to the opposite role, and you never really know. Gee, who is this person? They can play a character and sell it.
yeah. Some of the traditional spies that I ran across were really good at that, really good at it. And they, wouldn't they weren't the kind of people who'd stab you in the back. They'd spin you around, stab you in the heart, and watch you go down, kind of thing, and then walk. And it's like, let's have breakfast. I'm hungry, yeah, it was a very eye opening kind of a world back then for me, young kid and inexperienced, not talented, not tested, nothing like that. But these guys were, and 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 I got to be like a quiet kind of person. I only said something to lots of people when I had to, sort of thing. I was not a very talkative. Let me tell you all my secrets, kind of stuff. And yeah, like some people are these days. It's like, come on, get on with it. It's like, I've heard this story, or somebody you told me that 10 times or whatever. But but most people, their first reaction when they meet somebody new that I saw is that they're distrustful. In that circumstance. I mean, like if you work at Target or something, they're not going to do that. But if in those kind of circumstances, in traveling with that kind of a circle, those people are they're like each other, sort of thing. But they can I don't know how best to say that, but and they can be your best friend and also screw you at the same time, and they wouldn't think twice about doing it, right? So it's all about who benefits, right?
Lou and I were talking about this before the show, and I think some of those people, they have to have psychopathic tendencies, not necessarily a full diagnosis on, through the DSMV or the DSM, but they have to have some of those tendencies to be able to turn it on and shut it off like that.
Yeah, they do. In fact, I in my third book, Surviving Prague, I actually didn't have to, but I broke into Czechoslovakia behind the Iron Curtain. Most people are trying to break out, but I broke in. But during that time, I met a guy who was an absolute sociopath. He had no feelings for anybody that was human, none at all. And in my experience, he was after me, of course, too, as well. But whatever. He killed probably 30 or 40 people in his quest to work for the Russian government and that sort of thing. But yeah, complete no conscious, no thought of anything else but, oh, I need oh, I like that ring he's got on, so I'm going to get it, sort of thing. And he had this history of actually killing women, and because he saw himself as a ladies' man, but when I saw him, he was a really creepy kind of a guy. But yeah, so anyway, but yeah, he was a major player in the third book, but very, very much a sociopath, that he could do anything and be anyone that he wanted to be, and do what was necessary to solve problems or solve his whims, sort of thing, basically. Yeah, he had no qualms about that.
So tell us more about your main character.
Main character, his name is Doc. And the reason for that I didn't name him me, because it is 90% me, this character. I I gave him my nickname I had from high school. It was it's actually I worked in a mortuary for a few weeks, and I was cleaning out. I was sweeping up the the floor, where all the bodies were laying around with the sheets on it, and they were waiting for embalming process and all that stuff. And it's like, what the hell do I care? I'm a big shot anyway, right? So I'm sweeping the floor, and his body sat up on one of these tables with a creaking noise, like this, right? And so I said, the only thing standing between me and that door is this guy here. So I used this broom as a jousting pole, and bam, knocked his body off the table, ran up the stairs and through the lobby and out the front door, and I was 2 blocks away before the owner caught me, and they were twin brothers, two guys. One of them was playing the joke, and the other one kind of tracked me down, and he says, "Oh, that's my brother Bob." He's like, "Come on back. We promise not to play another trick on you." And so I said, "No, I quit." I said, that's good enough for me. I quit. And the guy says, "Come on." He's like, "I owe you money anyway. Just come back." I said, "No, keep the money." And he looks at me and he says, "Can I have my broom back?" I still had the broom. So the next day, of course, it's all around the school, and so forever after, I was known as Doc there. So, so I used that name and just moved it forward into real life there. So, but yeah.
Well, that's a funny thing about mortuaries. People are just dying to get in.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Hey.
I remember doing mortuary training in the Navy, and they taught us because insurance purposes when there's deaths. I worked in medical, and you have to be able to make sure it's prepared correctly in the contracts and things. And anyway, but I just remember going in there, and he's like, "Listen, if you're in a mortuary and it stinks, it's a bad one. Get out." I was like, "Really?" It's like they're not supposed to stink. I was like, "All right."
Yeah, there's no smell like a dead body. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Or a burning one. Not to go down bad roads, but
yeah, indeed.
I remember doing oh gosh, let me see. How long do non-disclosures go? Anyway, I was doing live tissue training, and they're like, "Doc," and I round the corner and the live tissue's on fire, and I'm like, and I just stop. And he's like, "Put him out!" And I was like, "Oh yeah." I was like, "Oh yeah," but I just never expected that type of realism.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Another thing they don't show in the movies, right?
So
put him out.
Chris wants to know how you got the name Paul.
How did I get the name Paul?
That's what. Tell us how you got the name Paul. That's what Chris asked.
Oh, my mother.
Answer of the night right there.
Sorry, Chris, I'm not sure which name you mean.
Tell us how you got the name Paul. I see what he's saying. No, now he's calling me a dick. I think he was trying to say Doc.
I actually ran with about 3 or 4 passports. I had a British passport and a West German passport and a Swiss for a while. And depending on which one I used, just that part is kind of like a Jason Bourne kind of a thing. But yeah, I had different names in different places, so I had to remember who I was at any one time. Herr Muller, or was I somebody else? Right?
So, how many languages do you speak then?
At that time, I could speak enough to get by. And my favorite saying about speaking languages is I could say, "How much for the both of you?" in 16 languages. Right? But I knew enough to get along. I had more Spanish and German than anything else. I had 2 years of Spanish in high school and Latin too as well in high school, which I never see. That's like you never use it again after you get out of high school.
What?
And then German I had 2 years in college, but it turns out that most of the Germans that I ran into in those days could speak better English than I could. So So it quickly went away when you're asking for a room and they say, "Oh, American, yeah, come on in," right? So, and yeah, so there. But the French were totally different, as welcoming as the Germans were to me. The French were very standoff. They hated Americans in the early '70s, and that actually was a wartime kind of a thing from De Gaulle being the uh, Eisenhower told him, he wanted to lead the D-Day invasion, right? So Eisenhower told him, "No, Charlie, you stay here in London and we'll get your country back for you." Well, that was the kiss of death for him. He hated Americans after that, and so they gave him his country back. But for the next 25 years, the French hated Americans. I mean, I saw that ugly American thing there all the time, but I was such a wimp, and nobody took notice of me that they didn't really care too much about me. But I saw it when they relate to other people in that. But
What's that they used to say? French rifles never been fired and only dropped once.
Right. Yep. Yeah, heard that before too. Yeah,
Oh.
they would rather be known as lovers, I guess, than fighters. But
Is
yeah, interesting world out there. But the books that the books that I write, I try to show the story more than tell it. Because telling the story wouldn't be the same, and I try to get. I showed the stories. I say because I used a lot of smell and sights and hearing kind of things, so to put the person right in the scene next to me, so that they could feel the same idiocy that I did, or the same fear, or the same laughter, whatever it happened to be, right? So I've gotten a ton of reviews that say it should be a movie. So so I'm thinking about that. But,
well, you bring up an excellent point. A lot of times, and I remember hearing this. I stole this from somebody else, but they were saying, you're looking at that through Western eyes. You're looking at that through Western eyes. That's why those things don't make sense, because you're evaluating it through Western eyes. I would hear all the time when I was in special operations training. And one of the things, though, I think is important that you talk about is, to say it in a very in a very hyperbolic manner. Look, different villages stink differently. And that's important.
Right.
It's part of what they are. It's part of their heritage. It's part of what's happening. And what I'll go into is very quickly in Pakistan, we had people who thought they understood the culture from America and thought there were some really neat clothes, and that they were going to combine these really neat clothes and it was going to look real authentic. And it was a dead giveaway you weren't from here. Because they don't wear that. The villagers don't wear that hat with that shirt.
Or that's color,
down there.
Right? Yeah.
Right.
And it's very obvious, very obvious who belongs where.
Yeah. And that's what what I tried to do a lot, was to kind of blend in everywhere I go. Even now, I sort of try to just blend in. I don't stick out much. And there's nothing unusual about me. And I'm kind of a guy that you'd see 100 times and never know that where I came from or what I was doing or anything like that. But it's I just try to blend in, and if you're in, as there's the old saying, if you're in Rome, do as the Romans do, kind of whatever it is. But that's what I did. So it's like I didn't stay at Marriott's and that kind of thing. It was really 3-story walk-ups and things like that, where British tourists would go and stay, for example, in France or Spain or something like that. I was right in with them, and I knew enough. I mean, they just look at me, just a haircut or something. It's like, oh, American, before I even spoke, right? They didn't said anything. And so that was kind of interesting there. But when they couldn't see what I was doing, I kind of couldn't see my real physical self. I kind of got away with a lot more in that. And in fact, in Czechoslovakia, I had 0 words of Czech. I knew, and so what I did when I was in my disguise there was to play a deaf mute. Right? So it's like, and I had a note pinned to my chest all the time. It said, deaf, don't in Czech, and so nobody ever asked me anything, right? So it was fine. I got away with that for a long time, a couple of months, anyways. Yeah. So. But,
nice. What's the closest you've ever been to being compromised?
Oh, actually, quite a few times. They taught me how to surveil, but not to how to avoid surveillance. So I was very easy to follow. Apparently, because that's what the MI6 lady would always tell me. It's like, who'd you bring with you this time, right? And so it was like, so yeah. So I was compromised like from day one on most assignments I was at, but I would be compromised as me and not as the disguised person. So I had to. I mean, it's like Halloween every day for me over there, and so I dressed up like something different, and never wore the same really disguised twice, except for changing my hair color, to a nasty brown or black, kind of thing, and that. But most everything else was like a false beard, or some kind of eye patch, or what, a pebble in my shoe kind of stuff, and I then became a different person. So it was there, but yeah, I was definitely compromised more than once.
I have a question for you, and it's going to seem weird that I'm asking this on the surface, but trust me, there's a reason for it. When you're in Europe, how often did you shower daily?
Yes, whenever I could. Yeah, I mean, there were a few times when I was actually in a sewer, and I couldn't. But
right,
yeah, but as much as I can. And in those days, not everyone did that practice. The French, especially, I seem to remember that they were like maybe once a week or 2-3 times a week. But that's the land of perfume. That's where it comes from, and
right,
and right. why it comes from there. But the Germans were pretty fastidious. I think the Brits were too, and taking showers and all that. But yeah, I tried to all the time. I mean, there were a few times when I kind of slept in a truck or something like that where it didn't. But
I laugh, and I asked that our listeners are probably laughing about that, saying what a dumb question, but that's probably how you got spotted a mile away being American before you even opened your mouth, because the culture is like you discussed, the Spaniards and a lot of the Central European countries, they don't have the same hygiene habits that we have. So you're walking in smelling of fresh soap and deodorant like, oh, American.
Right. Yeah. Well, and you could, I could tell even back then the haircuts were different, right? The men's haircuts were different, and not that I really ever had a stylish hair or anything, but they could just tell that it was just an American kind of a haircut. But my hair in those days were long, as you could imagine. It was I was being a hippie and stuff, and so I had to put it up under hats and different things like that to change that appearance, but and cut it a few times as well. But myself cutting it is a whole different thing than a barber cutting it.
I just wish I had hair. That's a whole different story. I got nothing, I've been living with this for a while now. There was a question in the room that wants to know when the 4th book is coming out.
Probably around March or April of next year.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to lay down this evening after we're done and actually do some reading.
Good, thank you. Yeah, be sure to let me know what you think, and because I'm always interested in what people think and know, and how they perceive the book, to be, whether it's realistic or not realistic, and that sort of thing.
I was kind of sharing this or waiting to share this till the end, or closer to the end. I wrote a book myself, same genre, but Lou was going to read it, but he doesn't read. So,
it's not true.
And he doesn't. Well, it is true. You don't read; you listen to audiobooks.
It's true. That is true.
And my book is not on audiobook, but it was fun to write. It's definitely in the military espionage genre. But I self-published it on Amazon, but I didn't do any marketing. It wasn't for me. It wasn't about that. It was just kind of cathartic and therapeutic to write and put that story out.
Yeah, it's a huge accomplishment to write a book, really, and because a lot of people sort of, kind of want to, and some intend to, but those who write it, it really does get to be fun, and at least when you're done with it, kind of thing, and of course, marketing is that's a full-time job for anything.
For sure.
But yeah, no, it's a great thing to do, is to write a book, and you feel, I mean, the first one, I felt much better. It's like, wow, yeah, I can actually do this. And a few people want to read it, kind of thing was a plus,
right.
But really it was the thing about, my son was in gymnastics, and tell me when you're tired of my stories, but my son did gymnastics and all the way through
just
college.
kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay. So
I'm just kidding.
He had 4 hours of training every night of the week, and then 4 hours on Saturday, kind of stuff to in his competition day. And so you get tired of that after a few years, so the parents, we just went over to the local pub while the kids are all doing the gymnastics, and you shoot the breeze, and I told a couple of stories and stuff, and it's like, no way, not you. And they said, yeah, this really happened. So my doctor friend, one of my doctor friends, she said, you should write a book. I said, I don't know about that, and she says, well, you're retired. What else you got to do? Right? You don't have anything else to do, so just write a book, right? So I said, okay, challenge accepted. And I started writing, and it got to be more fun and more fun and more fun. And I thought, wow, this is really fun for me. It's like, I don't care if anybody else reads it or not, but
right.
It really got to be fun. So I empathize with what you're saying there. It's a really good thing.
I didn't mention the name of it on purpose because it's not about me tonight, but I wanted to share that feeling. It's exciting. The research that you put into doing the book, it's not work because it's fun, and it's so satisfying to finally put a product out like that. And like I was the same way. I don't care if one person reads it, let alone, whatever, but it was just an accomplishment, something that I've always wanted to do.
Right. Yeah. And believe me, I'll bet you that it's better than 90% of the books that are actually on Amazon right now, because they're full of typos, which is a kind of that kind of grates on me. So it's like, even Word has a spell checker,
right?
Right.
Yeah, like, I did take the use my own money, and I did spend it, and I paid an editor because of that. I didn't want it to.
That's actually, that to me, that I would say that's a great thing for you to do, because I think an editor will take your work to the next level up. It's like, it'll be even better than you thought it was, kind of thing, because they'll catch little things, and they're kind of unbiased, and that's their job, to catch, either do the proofreading at the lowest level, or the developmental stage at the highest level, sort of thing, if you wanted to do that. But yeah, no, it's a great thing to have an editor, really is. A lot of writers edit themselves, and they say, oh, that's good, I'm good with that. It reads well and all this stuff, but you could read something 100 times and still not see that you're missing an is or a capitalization here or something of that sort. So
definitely. Well, it looks like it's that time of the evening.
Well, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, don't go away yet. We're not done yet. Yeah, we're coming into our Veterans Helping Veterans segment, and this week, I guess it's my turn, isn't it, Lou?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this week I am going to highlight the Fisher House. If you're not familiar with the Fisher House, it's a wonderful organization that basically provides housing for family members of wounded service members while they're actually still admitted into the hospital. And they've done so many good things. daily, they house and they take care of 1,300 families. They've served more than 455,000 families since their inception. And number of lodging days offered, over 12 million. 70,000 airline tickets provided by Hero Miles to service members' families to get them to where their service member is. As you can see, there's the little QR code on the screen there. If you want to find more out about them, please go ahead and check them out. And if you're so inclined, throw them some cash. They're a nonprofit organization. They do fantastic things for our wounded service members and their families.
Can I caveat on that real quick?
Absolutely.
Just add to it. I don't know if caveat's the right word. That's why I need an editor.
I see what you did there.
Thank you. That's a good. So, but the Fisher House, I worked in patient admin in the Navy for a long time, and they do wonderful things. I mean, so when you have service members getting these major operations after catastrophic injuries in Iraq or Afghanistan, the Fisher House will pay to fly the family to that major medical facility and house them. They provide laundry services. They provide all kinds of stuff, and it's all free of charge for the family whose loved one has been devastated by some of these war injuries, but even diseases and other issues that come up. They don't just do it with the wartime injured veterans who contract diseases, things like that, but it's all paid for the family. And when I've talked to those families, having dealt with making the arrangements as they left Japan for major procedures in other areas, is what was how I dealt with them. But just the feedback was always positive. That's such an amazing thing, and they had never known it existed. But yeah, the Fisher House is a great place, Andy. Happy to hear that come up.
Let me give you guys some kudos because I really appreciate you doing this for veterans, because I for one, and probably millions like me, appreciate what they do during their service and do not get the fair shake after their service. So I really appreciate you guys standing up for them and being the voice for them.
Well, thank you, sir. It's not something that we want to do. I feel like I could speak for both of us. It's a drive. It's a passion. It's so much more. So anything that we can do to help our fellow veterans, we're going to do it.
Excellent.
But Mr. Hollis, I have greatly appreciated you being on the show. Yeah. So much fun. I hope we didn't bore you.
No. I hope I didn't bore you guys with all my stories.
No.
Fascinating.
I got 1,000 more for you.
Well, we might have to get you back on the show. Hey, stick around, sir. I'm going to bring us out, and then we'll talk in the green room, if you will. Like we're a real show or something.
Don't eat all the snacks.
Thanks, guys, for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. Thank you for joining us. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you as well for tuning in. Thanks for the comments in the room. And we'll see you guys next week.